What's up, everybody? It's Andre Iguodala from the Golden State Warriors here. It's my pleasure on behalf of New Amendment and the Point Forward podcast to invite you all out on Friday, March 10th to Beyond the Big Ten live recording taking place at Over Under Sports Bar in Lincoln Park, Chicago. That's Friday, March 10th at Over Under from 3 to 7 p.m. Look forward to catching y'all there.
Hello and welcome into the Nittany Gritty, a podcast brought to you by the good folks at New Amendment. I am your host, Jon Sauber, joined by, in a new location with a nice little new backdrop, nice little new photo, Tim Frazier. Tim, how you doing? And for the good listeners, where you at?
What's up, John, man? Doing well. But transfer teams, man, I'm now in France, so I'm trying to hit all the countries I can, I guess, in this overseas life. But no, it's been a blessing. France is, it's my first time here, but it's pretty nice. It's pretty legit, clean. Not to say Greece wasn't, but as of right now, I'm choosing France over Greece.
Yeah. Hey, listen, they've all got their ups and downs. Sometimes, yeah. We talked about this pre-pod. The video quality on our end while recording this immaculate. This is a joke before, like. I don't think I've seen Tim this up close. Like, it's just very, very strange and very, very fun instead of looking at the pixels sometimes. But
right.
It has been it's been a week, right? Like, you are making those moves, and Penn State making some other moves, and no better time to get into the X's and O's of what happened than now. It was, man. It's been a weird, 2 weeks for them in general, right? Like, you go in, you beat Illinois at home. You take care of business against a Minnesota team that is bad. You beat Ohio State, in a win that was close, but, you probably felt pretty good about the whole way. Mm-hmm. And you're crushing Rutgers, just crushing them in the Bryce Jordan Center. Crowd's into it. I'm talking about, what this means going forward, to other beat writers watching the game. And then it just... I know some people are doing the typical Penn State basketball. I'll push back on that a little bit later. We can talk about it. But man, the collapse of all collapses, up 19 in the second half, end up losing the game. I think first off, getting into the emotional side of this is important too, because I think a lot of times fans look at players like yourself and be like, "Wow, dude, you sucked. Why'd you do that?" Right? You know what I mean? They try and boil it down to the lowest common denominator and simplify it when it's never that simple. I always say, when guys miss shots, they're not trying to miss. You know what I mean? You're not trying to miss those shots. You're just as upset about it. And Micah Shrewsbury always says, those guys are as upset as anyone because they put more work in than anyone for this. But when you suffer throughout, because I'm sure you've been a part of it, NBA career, now overseas, back when you were at Penn State, even in high school, when you have that kind of game, because Seth Lundy is the guy that everyone will point to here. He was 1 of 16 from the field, 0 of 11 from 3. I think he should have kept shooting, and I think that was the right decision. But when you have that kind of performance, how do you react? How do you process it, and how do you work through it and kind of come back from that? Because, listen, it's tough. You lose when you're up 19 and you play potentially the worst game of the season at a crucial time. It's not an easy thing to recover from.
It's definitely tough. It's not easy, and I think as I've gotten older and I've grown, I've learned to deal with it in different ways. But I feel for Seth, because I know right now just the importance of that game as far as the future goes for the NCAA tournament and just for Penn State basketball and his career. And I know it's weighing heavy on him, as I'm sure, like you said, that he had spent hours shooting after the game and coming earlier to be able to get to shoot before practice the next day. I think you just learn to put it behind you, because you have to understand that it's the game. It's the game of life. Everything there's ups and downs, and we talked about him earlier in the podcast before, where he was 6 for 6, 6 for 9, from 3, and we praised him. And it's just, there are gonna be days like this where you shoot 0 for 11. It's just how you bounce back from it. Hopefully that he's going to be able to bounce back from that. And again, as much as we harp on it, say that game could have decided to fate, but it's not necessarily out of their hands. They still have 2 more games, then we had the Big Ten tournament. And then for this team to continue to try to achieve the goals that they want to achieve, he has to step up and bounce back from, obviously one of the the worst games, and I'm sure he would say in his career as far as shooting wise. But I know also something that he, that I applaud him on is that he did keep shooting, because I know in my career and things that have happened with me where it was times where I had missed the first 3 or 4 and things weren't working, and I wouldn't say I was afraid to shoot, but I didn't want to shoot because I didn't want to continue to miss. And as a shooter, and you have to be able to put that behind. You can ask any of the greatest shooters alive. They tell you, man, they just keep shooting no matter what, because eventually it's going to drop. And for the great shooters and good shooters, all they need is one to go in. And when one goes in, you can turn that 1-11, and it can be like, a Damian Lillard performance. And next thing you know, you 10 for 13 from 3 or something like that.
Yeah, speaking of Dame, by the way, 71 is ridiculous. Like, just an unbelievable game. But that is besides the point here today. Seth was, I think he handled it during the game as well as he could have, right? Like, Micah Shrewsbury made the point after the game that it's not like they were drawing things up for Seth. The ball was finding him when they would, Pick would get doubled in the second half, and, Rutgers would bring 2 to the ball, and he'd have to get rid of it. And the ball would get swung, and Seth is open. And Seth is the best shooter in the Big Ten. Let me say that one more time. Seth Lundy is the best shooter in the Big Ten. There are, so of all, Big Ten players in men's basketball to be averaging at least 5 threes attempted in a game, Seth Lundy is number 1. Andrew Funk is number 2, percentage-wise. Seth was, I think, around 43%. Funk's around 40%. The two best shooters in the Big Ten shot 1 of 18. I hate to attribute it to this, but shit happens, right? Like, it just gets weird sometimes, and you have these off nights, and even like it's easy to have an off night and then let it affect the rest of your game. I know he committed a foul on the and one that put Rutgers ahead, but I thought he was really good defensively outside of that throughout the game. I thought he was taking the shots. It didn't feel like he was forcing shots. Micah said that he thought he was rushing some. I thought that was apparent too, but he wasn't forcing these looks. They were open. And yeah, man, you know what I want if I'm coaching a team? I want the best shooter in the conference shooting open shots, point blank, period. And I think that's, I hate to oversimplify sometimes, but I think you're right. Like, I've seen the reaction on Twitter of and Micah got asked about it post game, like, did he think about benching Seth? And it's like, no, you don't bench your second best player in the most important game of the year, no matter, how poorly he's shooting, because I thought otherwise he was still playing well. And I don't know, like you said, shoot or shoot, man. You just got to keep firing it up. And that dude can shoot over anyone. He can shoot with the best of them. You mentioned the 6 for 6, the 6 for 9. Like, we've seen him. He will have games, and I firmly believe he's going to play in the NBA, right? And even if it's on a 2-way contract, right? Like, he's a big wing that can shoot and that can defend, right? As you know, that has a ton of value in the league. Yeah. And that's the kind of guy that teams want to get. And he's going to have nights where, in the NBA, maybe it's 0 of 4. But you got to keep shooting. That's why you're there. That's why you're on the team. You were there to shoot. You're there to stretch the floor. I think there are a lot of fingers or a lot of places to blame, a lot of fingers to point at people for why this loss happened. And I think Micah is probably right when he took the brunt of the blame. But Seth Lundy is not. Like, his poor shooting is part of the reason, but his overall play is not part of the reason, right, that they lost this game.
And a lot of that too, just when coaches and players get asked these questions, or they ask him, should he have benched Seth Lundy, and it was, you ask those questions afterwards. And if Seth goes 1 for 11 and then he hits a big time shot at the end, now we talking about 2 for 12, and nobody even mentions, should you have benched Seth Lundy because he was 1 for 11. The outcome that comes out with a loss and such a severity of what this game means. Now we start to ask the questions of, what if? What should we have done? What should we have done? And at the end of the day, and I believe as a coach, sometimes you have to look at it. Should I have done something different, win or lose? And just because we lost the game, does that mean that that I benched my second best player, or the guy that I had built trust in, the guy that has gained trust from his teammates and from all the coaches there? No, you don't bench that guy, because at the end of the day, he is a shooter. You just said he's one of the top shooters in the Big Ten, and you don't bench that guy because he's had an off night. And at the end of the day, you look down at the end of your bench, that's the second best player you have. You're not going to bench Pickett when he goes 1 for 11 or as he did. He only had 11 points. No, guys have off nights, but you roll with your guns, especially your big guns, and those are your big guns, and those are the guys that have gotten you this far in the season with the record that you have and putting you in a position to make the NCAA tournament. So you roll with those guys no matter what. And, it's really unfortunate that everybody, but I understand people have to do their jobs. And that's, as reporters, that's their jobs to ask, hey, right. Do you feel like you should have, John, I'm sure you up there, do you feel like you should have, what I mean?
To be clear, I was not the one asking if Seth Lundy should have been benched because, I thought the answer was obvious, right? No, it's clear, right? To me, it wasn't something that after a game like that, you ask about, the emotions of it because, I asked you, the response, because you want to know how we've seen Micah has not handled losses well at times this year, right? And I thought his response post-game press conference, and we actually had his weekly media availability 15 hours later, and it's just the way the schedule works out. So we talked to him twice within 16 hours. We got there, he's welcome back, because he had literally just seen us, right, and taking questions from us. And so you ask about that side of it, and you can ask about the strategic questions. I just thought that was I don't know, maybe it was just me, but I thought it was a clear no, you play your best players, right?
Right.
And you ride through with them. The one thing that, I think is probably a better question following the season, and when they get a chance to look at maybe what went wrong if they don't make that NCAA tournament. But I don't think we had to dive deep on it post game because Micah took accountability. They didn't do enough offensively to set those guys up to succeed. They just kept getting the ball to Pickett and letting them go, right? And they would, again, you get the screen, they bring 2 to the ball, and then he's got to get rid of it. Yes, you're getting 4 on 3, but you're not putting your best players in their best positions. I thought Cam Winter was awesome in the first half. There's a reason he was the player that came out to talk to us after the game, right? Despite them playing poorly to end it, he was really good. I thought once they started realizing that they were hedging high, bringing 2 to the ball pretty much every time Pickett had it. I thought they should have gone to Winter and try to get him some of those looks that he likes, some of those 12-footers, that he had been hitting, especially the last 3 games. He's been arguably their third best player in that stretch. Right. And even I think some of the criticism rightfully has to go to Pickett, right? Because we praise him, right? We've said he's an All-American. I still think he should be an All-American, but he's either got to be willing to take some more difficult shots that we know he can make, or he's got to know when those opportunities present themselves and take advantage, because I think there got a point where he was expecting 2 to come to the ball. The double team would come, and he would get rid of it, and he was doing a good job of that. And then one time, it stands out in my head, he gets into the lane, and he has one of those 10-footers that he loves, that he can just rise up over a guy and make it, or fade away and make it. And he passed it to Miles Dredd, and I don't think Dredd was necessarily expecting it. Dredd loses the ball. It's a turnover. That ends up being one of the many possessions you can point to that lost them this game. And it's I think maybe I don't know if he'd gotten in his own head. We haven't talked to him since then. I'll be curious to ask him down the road following the season, what was going on there. But he just he was too deferral, right? At that point, yes, you're not going to get many opportunities. You got to take them when they come. And I think he had just gotten kind of used to okay, the pressure's coming, now I get rid of the ball, right? You had almost fallen into they had lulled him into the trap of it's not my half, I'm not going to be shooting much. And it led to 0 shot attempts in the second half, which is, I said this before we started recording, Cam Winter was the player we talked to, but, he was asked by Daniel Gallen, Lines 24/7, Jalen Pickett shot 0 shots in the second half. Before Daniel could even finish the question, Cam was taken aback and under his breath goes, damn. Guys didn't realize it, right? It was that kind of severe and drastic. And I don't know, you're just not going to win that game if your best player's not taking those shots. I know they could have had other guys made shots, but to me, Jalen in that situation has to kind of take control, right? You want to see one of the best players in the country really take control. And I think from that standpoint, it's probably a little disappointing.
Yeah, it's definitely disappointing, man. And like I said, I praised him all last week, but I'm like you. I'm critical of it because you as a player, you can't have made. I can't fathom the fact that the biggest game of his season, the biggest game of his career, and in my eyes, and I'm assuming his eyes, to solidify them to make the NCAA tournament, something that Penn State hasn't done in 10 years. To be able to do that, and you kind of just. I don't want to say he ran and hide, but he he fell into the trap and he just decided, hey, you know what, this is just not me. Tonight's not my night. And you can't do that. You know, we just talk about you're going to be an All-American. You know what I mean? Like, you're an All-American no matter what. You know how hard that is to be an All-American. You put the numbers and you're showing everybody you are an All-American, then it should be that much harder to be able to stop an All-American. And to me, you know, I know Rutgers sent two guys at him, and I know he made the right plays and the right reads. But for sometimes, especially in the second half, you have to be dominant enough to be like, hey, I can't. They're gonna have to send a third guy at me because this is the first time a team has in the Big Ten has sent two guys to you. You know, but I do believe he kind of fell into it, and he was just like, you know what, this isn't my night, or you know, and maybe he was fatigued, and you know, because he has been doing a lot the last, you know, obviously carrying the team the last 3 games, but you know, at the biggest game of your career, you know, you want to have your best game. You know, you want to have a 41 performance, you want to have a 30 performance, you want to have something that's leading this team right now, and I think it kind of went over to Seth Lundy a little bit, you know what I mean? Because, you know, he's feeling more pressure to like, hey, I got to score. These shots that keep coming to me, I got to score. And Funk the same way. I got to make this because Pickett is not being the same Pickett that we so used to seeing. And it's okay to have off nights, but I was very disappointed. And I want to be critical on him because if you are All-American, which we believe you are, you have to be able to, when 2 guys come to you, that's not going to stop you. Because, you know, you look at all the other, you know, when Edey gets 2 guys. I always go back to Edey because I'm sure he'll be, you know, an All-American.
He's probably National Player of the Year at this point.
Right. You know, so and we look at him and he gets to double team almost every game, you know, and you have to find ways to be able to get through that and to show how great you are as a player. Not saying that you need to shoot all the balls and, you know, shoot over 2 to 3 defenders, but at the end of the day, in the second half, especially when the game is on the line, when you see that the team you're up 19 and Rutgers is on their way back and they're fighting back when you need a basket and your team needs a basket, that you have to be able to take that shot and be able to make that shot to keep this, you know, the belief of the season alive. Because right now, you know, now we're back to what we just said before the 3 games that you just went crazy and put the team on your back. Now we're sitting back in the same position thinking like, is this over with? Is this done? Is the tournament hopes gone out the window because of, you know, 1 game? You know, give credit to Rutgers because they came with a game plan. It was successful for them and they were able to beat Penn State again. But, you know, at the end of the day, you have to be critical of Pickett. You know what I mean? Yeah, you know, we could talk about Lundy missing all the shots, Funk missing all those shots, and, you know, Dredd not really doing much either. But at the end of the day, you know, your star didn't show up as well. You know what I mean? So I think it's just a collective as far as everybody had an off night and guys didn't step up when needed to be stepped up for us to win one of the most important games of the season.
Yeah, and you know, I think when you lose a game like this, the fingers get pointed yes. Maybe to the guys that missed shots, but it should be pointed at the best player on the team who wasn't at his best and the head coach who wasn't at his best, right? Like, right. You and I have excessively praised both Jalen and Micah this year, and they have deserved it. This does not take away what they've done this season. Neither of them were at their best on Sunday, right? Yeah. We talked about it with Jalen. I thought once Micah saw that Jalen was kind of not necessarily out of it, but not, being as aggressive, I thought the ball should have been in Cam Winner's hands a lot more, right? Yeah. I thought to his credit, I thought Micah handled the Seth situation perfectly. He pulled him out late in the second half, had a conversation with him, essentially gave him a hug while he's talking to him, and sent him right back in. That was the perfect way to handle it. But schematically, we've seen that Micah is one of the brightest coaches in college basketball. I have no issue saying that. He is a brilliant basketball coach. He was not on Sunday. It happens, right? Not all my stories are great. Not every game you play is great. It happens to all of us in every profession. But Sunday, he was not great. And I thought he kind of failed the offense and kind of didn't set them up to succeed. And again, it's going to happen. It sucks for them that it happens at the biggest moment of the season. But as you said, and this is a good place to switch it up and get to the scouting report, because it's not over. Every time, you want to be well, that's the one, that'll do it. And maybe it feels a little more over because the way that it happened. Listen, man, if they go beat Northwestern in Evanston and take care of business against Maryland at home, they're going to make the NCAA tournament. I know it sounds crazy. And I know everyone wants to do the, I told you so, same old Penn State, which again, I think is from a reported perspective anyways, I think that's a lazy take, right? I don't like because it's our job to be objective about each individual situation. And I had a conversation with a couple of people about this too. For a fan, I think it's okay to feel that way because you're talking about your emotions, like, right? Like you're feeling the same way you felt in collapse X, Y, and Z and like whatever other years, right? Like as a Philly sports fan, I very much understand the feeling of the collapse, right? Like it was, the Phillies are in the World Series, they lose, Eagles are in the Super Bowl, start to blow out. I'm like, here we go again, because it's a feeling. Right. It's not analysis, right? It's not what's actually happening. Micah Shrewsbury's coach teams aren't the same as Patrick Chambers' coach teams, aren't the same as Ed DiCella's coach teams, right? Like they're different. Right. These situations are different. This isn't, yes, there are institutional failings with issues like NIL that we've talked about in the past. This is not happening because it's Penn State basketball, so to speak, right? This is happening because of the circumstances at hand. So I get annoyed when I see the same old Penn State from people who should know better, right? Like I think it's okay for fans to feel that way. That's not, the point here. But at the end of the day, people can same old Penn State it all they want. They win 2 basketball games. They're in the NCAA tournament since the last time they were there when you were playing at Penn State, right? And I think listen, it sucks. This is what I talk about with the bounce back, but you got to go Northwestern now. And I joked with a couple other reporters after the game, like as soon as they lost, I was like, oh yeah, they're definitely beating Northwestern. Like this is how this goes, right? Like they bounce back. This is a team that bounces back when their back's against the wall. That's what I wrote about after the game, that their backs were against the wall. And I wrote it with like the idea that, yes, these are the situations that they've been excelling in all season. Backs go up against the wall, they come back fighting. They're a veteran team. They win these games. I don't know. I kind of think they're going to beat Northwestern. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm crazy. But this is, I think, their chance to prove that, like, yes, when things go wrong, we have a response. Like, even when it keeps happening, when you keep having these, like, maybe 2 or 3 games where you don't play well, or this one game where it blows up, they're going to keep proving that they have the fight and that they are good enough to make the NCAA tournament. And, again, maybe I'm nuts. I still think they're going to end up making it.
I'm with you. I don't know if they'll beat Northwestern. I want them to. I think it really just depends on how, the names that we drop, how Coach bounces back, how Pickett bounces back, how Lundy and Funk bounce back. And like you said, Winder's been great the last 4 games. But, those other 4 guys, it's how they bounce back. Are they down in the dumps right now because they feel like, their hopes of NCAA tournament are out the window? Or do they still believe that, hey, we can still do this? Because I don't at the end of the day, you can see them. I think they're capable of beating any team. When they play their best or play the right way and guys are on, I think they can beat any team from the top to bottom in the Big Ten. And they have to look at it one game at a time. You have to go into Northwestern right now, where Northwestern is the same way. They're pretty much solidified, I think, to make the tournament. They've won enough big games. But at the end of the day, they want a higher seed, and they're playing from a lot, just for a lot more than just to make the NCAA tournament. Because I'm sure for Northwestern, it's been a long time as well. I don't know how long it's been for them making a tournament, but I know they're
they don't routinely make it. I'll tell you that.
Right,
much.
exactly.
It's not often.
Exactly, and of course, like I mentioned last week about the whole Taylor battle and Boo Boo Booey, the whole Penn State connection with Taylor, because I know there's some insight on there about how much they really want to win this game to even solidify themselves in making the tournament. So it's going to be a dogfight, and they have to go into Evansville, or was it Evansville, Evanston? I always get them mixed up.
Evanston. Evansville's in Indiana. That's that I wasn't far from for a little bit in Indiana.
Yeah. So go into Evanston and try to take care of business, where it's going to be a tough crowd, because Northwestern was rolling. I think they lost their last game.
They've lost their last 2 now, which is Micah Shrewsbury used to joke about this last year, that seemingly every time Penn State played a team, that team was coming off 2 losses and really motivated. And this definitely falls into that category. They lost a close one on the road to Illinois. They got blown out by Maryland at Maryland, which seems to be happening to a lot of teams though.
Yeah. So the opportunity is there, and I'm really excited to see it, because now we're talking about, hey, I think this is the make or break. This is it right here. I don't know if we, obviously when we get to the tournament time, then we'll say, hey, it's still a shot. Hey, all we got to do is make it to the championship.
You just gotta win 3 in the Big Ten tournament now instead of 2.
We'll see. But I believe right now this is it. They have to win this game. They have to, play their best. When you need your best player, we need Pickett to play as he's played before last, against Rutgers, and he has to do that. And he should know that he has to be able to carry this team and play the right way and put this team in position to win. And I'm sure Coach is going to be on his A game, and I think everybody else needs to be on their A game too, because hey, if they don't win this game, we're talking about another NIT performance.
Yeah, and they're this Northwestern one's enormous. The Maryland one is enormous. The idea that it's over, though, I think, like you said, like it's really not. Like again, this might be like the last stand. I know we keep saying it, but this one actually is probably their last chance. Otherwise, they would have to win the Big Ten tournament, and it's just not going to happen. I don't think. Right? Like I do think Purdue matches up with them so poorly that because of Zach Edey, that they would struggle in that game, but. They win these two, and they're firmly like on the bubble with a good shot of making it to Dayton for the first four. I think if they win these two and win a game in the Big Ten tournament, I think they're probably in as like an 11 seed, right, with a really good resume. It's a really good basketball team. Like even if let's say they lose these last two and it just all goes awry and they end up finishing the season like 17-15 or 18-15 or whatever, like this is a really good team, and I hope that doesn't get lost to potentially a negative result, based on one like bad collapse. Because
John, but at the same time, I think we know this is a good team. We've already said this is a good team.
I think we know this is a good team, though, right? Like I think you and I know this is a good team. I don't know if that's because I keep seeing the like same old Penn State,
Yeah.
and I hope this team isn't lost to that idea, right?
Yeah, because this is like you hit it on the head just a couple of minutes ago about how this isn't the same team. This isn't even the same team as last year. This isn't the same team as the year that we went to the to tournament, when I went to the tournament, or even Lamar Stevens' team. Like this is a completely different team, and we just I just hate to see it because we praise this team so much because we knew the potential that they had. And, the collapse, like we said, we're going to look back. And like I told you, we're going to look back on some of those games, the collapse where we had, where they could have won and they should have won, games that the Wisconsin, those games are going to look back and be like, hey, man, if you win those games, and now we're not talking about 17 and 15, we're 18 and 14, 19, and, whatever the case may be. So, I think that's just a disappointment. So, but I don't want to speak too much negative energy out. I believe that they're going to still, there's a shot and they can do it. So all they have to do is take care of Northwestern, and then we'll sit here and we'll talk about what's the deal for Maryland at home.
Yeah. Well, that's like
on senior night. I'm assuming that's going to be senior night, right? Correct.
Yeah, that'll be senior night. A noon tip on a Sunday is just I bitch about it all the time. But dude, stop making me wake up at 10 in the morning. Like, just let me sleep in on the weekends. But like, no, this is like it's a 17 and 12 team. That's good. Yeah. Right. Like, and they got to win these last two to get to 19 and 12. But I think you mentioned it. The word on campus. This is senior night, right? This is we got it coming up on Sunday. The Maryland game is different for a lot of reasons. If they beat Northwestern, the stakes are high against a good Maryland team that they're capable of beating, I think. But the emotions are high, right? We talked to Miles Dredd yesterday, and he said he doesn't know what he's going to feel, right? Because you just never know. The emotions are as high as they get. The stakes could be as high as they get. And you're just feeling everything. And the senior night ceremony, senior day ceremony is pregame. Right, so it's like you kind of get that out of the way, but you're still like, there's some juices flowing from that. Like I obviously do not have this experience. One of us does. It is you. What is that feeling? Knowing not knowing it's right. It wasn't over for you. You were still playing basketball, but like for some of these guys, it is over. And even for the best guys, like this version of what they're doing, this team. This is the last time they'll have this experience. What does that feel like going into it? What did it feel like for you?
Oh, man, it's very emotional. It is because your family's all in town. All the seniors' families in town, and it's kind of like even though it's not over because you still have games afterwards. You still have the tournament, the Big Ten tournament, and hopefully for these guys, the NCAA tournament, NIT, whatever it may be. But you kind of feel like, hey, this is my last game. And the night before, I remember sleeping. I was like, what? I gotta have the best game ever. I gotta go out with a bang, and you know what I mean. And you get emotional. Like I've seen it from guys when I was a sophomore, when Taylor and all those seniors came out. Man, you could just Taylor was like boo-hooing, and I'm sitting there just like as a sophomore. I'm like, man, come on, and we got a game to go, But and then as I become a senior, and I realize it's just like because you see all the emotions and basically just all the ups and downs you have been throughout your 4-year, 5-year career, and just to see it all coming down to coming to an end. It's like at the end of a roller coaster, right when the last drop, and then that's the end of the roller coaster, and you sitting there and you're just like, You want to hug everybody, tell you, like, I just remember telling everybody, thank you so much, thank you for this. And, you know, for me, it was, you know, coming off an Achilles injury too. So I was just sitting there just like, thank you, man. Thank you, you know, everybody, man. I appreciate everything, you know, and it was just like, you want to tell everyone, you wanted to perform the best you could perform to show the gratitude to everybody. You know, like I said, I continue to say thank you, but I wanted to show the gratitude. I wanted to play the best. I wanted to have the best game. I wanted to, you know, show how much appreciative that I was to everybody, and, you know, from the coaches to the staff to the players, and also, you know, to my family, and then to top it all off, to all the fans, because, you know, like the fans that come out on the Nittany Nation, I don't, you know, they've when I was there, they were phenomenal. You know, I was always just the same group of people, even when we had losing records, when we were winning, when we were going to the tournament, they were so phenomenal. You knew them, everybody face by face. They were great. And you want to just go out there and perform for them and just let them know how grateful you are from the experience that they, you know, the college experience that you had, you know, that you got. And so I know the emotions will run high, especially for, you know, those seniors against Maryland. But, you know, at the end of the day, you still have a game to play. And for them, this is going to be even, you know, after they beat Northwestern, this will be one of the, you know, biggest games of their careers. And, you know, why not do it on senior night? You know, I mean, I think it's the best time to do it. Why not go out with a bang and do it the right way and send your last home game at Penn State, you know, off with fireworks.
Yeah, and listen, I always say it, like, I have no rooting interest other than, like, the good story. Yeah. Pretty good story. I would very much enjoy writing the, you know, seniors going out, winning 2 in a row to kind of salvage it all. And it's on the table. You know, it's very much on the table. And I'm, like you said, and like I said, we both think they're going to win this next one. I honestly think they're going to beat Maryland too. So we'll see if it actually happens. I think that's a good place to leave it this week, though. Yeah. It's all on the line now, right? This is it. Like, we keep saying this is it, but now for real, we promise this one's actually it. You can find us, as always, wherever you're listening to this, watching it. We're available wherever podcasts are available. On YouTube, of course, at Beyond Big Ten. On Twitter, on TikTok, on Instagram at Beyond the Big Ten. You can find Tim on Twitter at TimFraze23, and playing for Strasbourg in France now, after leaving Greece. You can find me on Twitter at Jon Sauber, where I will continue covering Penn State men's basketball and football. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day.
Beyond the Big Ten is a network of podcasts that aims to be your go-to resource for all things Big Ten. We cover the entire conference with shows hosted by ex-players and athletic alumni, aiming to be your go-to source of information and entertainment for your favorite team. Hosted by ex-Big Ten players, media, and insiders, our podcasts are focused on giving diehard fans and those alums an inside scoop about the teams and people that make the Big Ten Conference one of the most watched and most talked about conferences in sports. We're excited to talk Big Ten basketball with you wherever you may be. Subscribe now.